Welcome, one and all, to the inner circle. We're back again to talk about D&D. I'm just going to cut right to the chase. We're talking about D&D, the movie AJ's in love with. I'm not sure why I watched it. I wish I didn't. It was bad. It was very bad. So we're just going to cut right to it. AJ, why D&D?
So a little backstory with this movie. It came out in the year 2000. It was released by New Line Cinema, which is the same production company that released Lord of the Rings a year later. But essentially, the writer, director, and producer of this movie, Courtney Solomon, was a childhood fan and avid player of the game Dungeons and Dragons, which, for those of you who don't know, is a fantasy sort of Lord of the Rings-esque tabletop role-playing game where you assume the role of the character that you create and rolling dice, and that determines the outcome of your actions and all that jazz. So he was such a huge fan, he decided to get the rights, get together a budget, and just make this movie because no one else would. And while it's a very inspiring story, it's also unfortunate because this movie is one of those, it's so bad, it's good. I watched it for the first time back when my parents still had like Comcast cable, like on demand. And it was free on demand. I got my friends over to watch it, and we were all huge D&D players, and we could not believe what we were seeing. It was like a comedy riot. We couldn't stop laughing, and to this day, we still think it's funny. And I'm happy to have introduced you to what is considered to be the only D&D movie.
So I'm not sure I would be so positive sounding. While I was watching D&D, I had two thoughts in my head. One, how much did they pay Jeremy Irons to be in this movie? Well, no, three thoughts, because the second thought was how much did they pay Marlon Wayans to be in this movie? Which, you know, okay, Jeremy Irons and Marlon Wayans are in this with a bunch of nobodies. And just I don't understand why it was made, how it was made, and why it's so cheap. It's made in the year it comes out in the year 2000. This movie's probably made 98, 99, because there's no way it took more than like 2 years to make this.
Well,
And it looks like it was shot in the early 80s.
To my knowledge, the movie was completely like personally financed. So that might be your answer.
Yeah, that I could definitely see that, because okay, I'm probably gonna edit this at least a little bit, hopefully. So shot of D&D here. Okay, shot of another movie that came out in 2000 right here. There's a very clear difference. One of them does not look like it came out in the year 2000. And it doesn't feel like it either, because the way the story flows and the way the script was written feels like an old 80s adventure movie, but to me, in a stale way. Maybe to you, it's in a more fun kind of way.
Oh no, you're totally right. It's a 100% stale plot. But that's kind of what makes it so good fun to watch. Is just like they tried, but they obviously didn't know what they were doing.
I think what makes it at least a little fun is Jeremy Irons playing his best Palpatine from the prequels, and Marlon Wayne's just being doing Marlon Wayne's goofy screaming. That's always fun.
Well, let's like do a quick plot summary. Essentially, Jeremy Irons overacting to the nth degree, the most overacting I think I've ever seen in my entire life, plays this character Profian, who is a evil wizard that wants to take over the kingdom. And our heroes are two thieves and a girl wizard, and they get ousted by Profian, and they have to go recover said MacGuffin before Profian does, in order to make sure that he doesn't take over the kingdom. You know, really by the numbers adventure. But you throw in Jeremy Irons, you throw in Marlon Wayans, who plays the second thief, like the sidekick, comedic relief. His name is Snails, who is, I think we can agree on this, Clayton. Snails is
Mhm.
probably the best character in the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
he really made the movie honest. Like he made it at least fun to watch. I could look at the screen and keep up and not be completely bored when he's on. Um, and then they kill him. I'm not like we don't need spoilers. This movie's 100 years old, and then they just kill him.
Yeah, he
And
dies like
then
halfway through the movie.
yeah, and the third act of the movie just doesn't have the comedy character, which is, I mean, that's fine. Like that statement on its own is fine, but in this movie, they really needed that comedy character.
They really did, yeah. But I mean, also like, I can see how Marlon Wayans as Snails could also annoy some people because he gives off a lot of like Ruby Rod from the Fifth Element kind of vibes. He
Hmm.
even makes the same noises, you know, the sound, like he does that a lot. Um, what else do I want to say about Snails? While he's probably the best character in the movie, it's probably because he feels the most out of place.
Yeah, he feels very like just I don't know how to describe it. He doesn't fit in. He's like he's definitely there to like just take over the scenery and just do his thing with it.
Yeah, to my knowledge, like he was filming Requiem for a Dream and this movie back to back. So like he would one day of the week go and shoot Requiem for a Dream, you know, this hard-boiled story about drug abuse and drug addiction, and then immediately the next day go to the set of Dungeons and Dragons and has to play like this over-the-top thief character surrounded by people in really cheap fantasy costumes and ridiculous sets. Well, I will say one of the positives of this movie, the sets are usually very good.
Yeah, the set design is incredible, which is strange when you contrast it with the bad costumes and the bad acting, and not to be mean to actors, the cast of like mostly iffy people, like they every now and then a Tom Baker just pops in for a bit because
Oh, that's
they
right.
had a few days to shoot with him.
I
But for the
just
most part, like the main cast is people like Justin Whalen, who the man's stale.
like I totally forgot that Tom Baker, the sixth Doctor himself, was in this movie. He's in it for like a minute though.
He shows up, he looks at the camera, goes, "You know who I am," and then he's gone. And
Yeah, he
really,
plays like the Elf King or something like that.
I
I don't know.
don't e- I don't remember. I
But
have the cast list open. That's why I keep looking to the side in case the camera focuses on me. Um,
what's the
and
name of the actor that played Damodar, Mr. Blue Lipstick?
that was Bruce Payne.
Bruce Payne. If you want to talk about bad acting, we should talk about Bruce Payne. Apparently, to my knowledge, he's a British theater actor primarily,
Mm.
and I kind of want to blame the director more than I want to blame Bruce Payne. But the way that he delivers all of his lines are so overly drawn out, dramatic. Like he says, like he gives serious orders to his men that should be followed like that because of how important their job is. But he takes like 5 minutes to say a single line of dialogue because he's at a constant 10 in intensity.
Yeah, so it's very weird. He has one mode from start to finish, even when he's in pain, it's I will get them. But like with a more angry face on. It's very weird. But
He
he might be
talks
the
in like
best
this
part of the movie.
whispering voice all the time.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
really the best part. It's the best thing in the movie. No, nothing else comes close except maybe Jeremy Irons screaming like a maniac and doing like a bunch of head shakes and
Let the blood rain from the sky. That is an actual line of dialogue, and it's great.
like and the final conflict at the end of the movie, because I don't want to go too long about D&D. The final conflict is like it's pointless, or like not point. It makes no sense. It kind of the hero just he gets the MacGuffin device, and then they're immediately like, all right, wrap this up. He just goes to the bad dude's tower when a
Where they
war
reference
starts.
Star
Beats
Wars.
him. Yeah, and he just beats him like pretty
Yeah.
quick. And then we can take a minute here. We need to talk about the ending.
Yeah. Okay. So I would place a spoiler alert here because the ending of this movie has to be experienced completely blind, in
You
my
might be
opinion.
right. You might be right.
In my opinion, because the ending is so ridiculous, so out of left field, doesn't make any sense. You will be rolling on the floor laughing. I kid you not. That's what
I
happened when I
wish
first saw it.
I wish you or Sterling, who's your roommate we watched the movie with, I wished one of you were filming me on your phone as the ending played, because I was first I took a pause and I was in disbelief. And then I proceeded to say, "What? That doesn't make any sense. Is that it?" And as I said, "Is that it?" the director's name pops up on screen as triumphant music's playing. So run the spoiler here. Okay. So they commit suicide, right? Like, I mean, I'm just gonna
They,
be
they
really
don't
blunt about this.
they don't come out and say exactly what's happening. It's just that's how out of left field it is. But you can assume, based on what they're doing, then yes, they formed a suicide pact essentially. What happens is the main character recovers the MacGuffin, which is like this red gem that has the power to control an army of red dragons. And after they beat Profian, they go to Snails' grave to pay their respects, and he takes out that jewel, and because it's his best friend, the main character, he goes and he gives his final speech, and he's like, "You finally got it, man! Your big score." And then out of nowhere, the gem starts glowing, and all of the main party, the main characters, all together are watching this
Which
happen.
none of which did anything the entire plot of the movie. It was only Ridley who was the main character, the
Yeah, it was
adventure guy.
mainly like Ridley, and then a little bit of his wizard girlfriend that helped out.
The tiny.
But so he goes to the elf ranger chick that's been following them around, and she goes, "Shh, do not question your gift," as if to silence any questions the audience may have. And then all of the companions together put their hands on top of the gem. Evidently, we're meant to believe that Snails is still alive somehow. So once they all like put their hands over the gem, they evaporate into
Mhm.
like beams of red light or whatever, or fairy dust or something like that, and they all float away into the sky
So
without
you'd
any
understand my
explanation.
confusion when for you're mourning at a grave of a recently dead friend. That grave evaporates and a gem appears. You pick up the gem, and this woman tells you, "Don't question it. Just put your hand on it." And then you too evaporate and get snapped, just like Thanos with the glove on. So I'm assuming they all died and went to gem heaven.
I don't know, man, but what an
And
ending.
and I really have a problem with his line talking about you finally got your big score when not long after Snells was killed in the movie, the main character is literally in a treasure room where he could have easily, like his friend just wanted to get some money. Like that's why he was on this journey. he was in a treasure room, and he literally takes a moment where he thinks about just pocketing some gold coins because that's what snails would have done. And he goes, "Nah, I'm too good for that." But somehow, at the end of the movie, when he didn't loot anything, he's like, "You finally got your treasure, buddy." Like, what? He's
Well,
not a Viking. Death isn't his ultimate treasure.
also like he's telling Snails that like he has to get going soon or else he's gonna miss his knighting ceremony.
Yeah, that too. Okay, so he obviously was taken in by the kingdom as a hero, which rightfully so, based off of what happened in the plot. But yeah, so he doesn't get knighted by the kingdom, and he doesn't end up with the hot wizard girl because he dies. He puts his hand on a magic rock and he evaporates.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a good ending by any means, but it's funny as all hell. Like, good lord. Um, oh, also another thing that I want to mention, being that this is a Dungeons and Dragons movie, it has very little to do with the established lore of Dungeons and Dragons. You see, yes, you see dragons, which are CGI like PS2 graphics. They look awful. And then two, you see another terrible CGI monster, the Beholder, which if you're a D&D player, you know is like the floating Cyclops head thing with all the eye stalks coming out of it. But that's it. There's literally like two references to D&D in the entire movie.
It's someone he had the money, he bought the licensing rights to the name, and he turned his homebrew game into a film, and it's
Exactly.
very clear.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
So uh, so I kind of hate this movie. If I was gonna rate it out of like a 10 scale, I'd probably give it like a 2. Jeremy Irons and Marlon Wayans really they probably got back problems after filming this because they carried it. I would give it a 4. They bump it up 2 whole points for me out of 10.
so if I have to give this movie two different ratings, one, I have to rate it as a movie, as a quality film. It probably ranks as a 2. Um, but if I had to rank it out of my own personal enjoyment of it, it's a 10.
A 10. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
This is no
I feel
Godzilla Final Wars, which is a certified 10.
Listen, we'll talk about Godzilla Final Wars another day, but D&D, I look at D&D the same way that I look at The Room by Tom Wiseau. Terrible films, love to watch them. They're so entertaining, and they never fail to entertain me.
That's fair. Also, real quick, I just noticed. So the Empress, the little princess girl that had the worst acting in the movie, played by Thora Birch, who, as we would know, was the daughter in American Beauty. That's
Oh,
very strange.
wait, she was the daughter in American Beauty?
Yeah.
Oh God, why is her acting so bad?
Well, that's D&D.
Yeah, okay, that's D&D.
What an experience.
It has to be seen to
Okay.
be believed.